Hi guys, it's Carissa, and I thought it would be fun to do a quick little video for you today. Before I get started, I do want to mention how thankful I am for our YouTube shower, and that was the last video I posted if you missed it. Unfortunately, I felt really awkward about mentioning it as often as I probably should have, so a lot of people who had wanted to participate missed it. They missed the deadline, and the day after we posted the video, we received 4 gifts that were intended to get here by the deadline. So we have decided to do a part 2, and I'll be a little bit better about mentioning it just to make sure that everyone who wants to be included can still make it to the second shower. I'm not sure what the date will be yet. I think maybe I'll make the cutoff December 1st, just because I don't want to get too close to the holidays, and I also don't want to get too close to my due date and not be able to actually produce the video for you. So we will plan for that for now, and the wish list will be linked below for the Amazon baby registry. You do not have to participate. I am certainly not asking anyone to, and that is part of what the problem was. It just felt awkward. It felt, I didn't want to bring it up too much, but it turns out I didn't quite bring it up enough. So I will post a reminder on Instagram and on Snapchat. And those of you who have contacted me and said that you have gifts that are on the way, you don't have to worry. We will include it in the second video. Just to give a little bit of background on our story, we were trying to conceive for over a decade. We've been married 11 years, and we're only just now expecting our first child. So it's been a really long road, and as you can imagine, over the years there are names that have been sort of used up or taken, so that has affected our list. I did notice a few things about myself when I was making a list for our little girl's name, because we do have some boy names picked out that we're pretty set on, unless something were to come up and prevent us from using them if we were ever lucky enough to have another child. So it was a little bit more of a challenge to select a girl's name, because over the years our girl names had been taken. And certainly the popularity of a name has affected our opinion, and I think that has changed over the years. For example, when I was younger, a lot of girls that I knew were named Sarah or Jennifer, and they said that their parents had picked it out because it was popular at the time. And I think that that's less of the case these days. I mean, that's a sweeping generalization, but I feel like sometimes once a name becomes popular, it's less attractive because a lot of people these days seem to really look for unique names. Some things I noticed about my preferences were that I prefer short names, sort of short and strong names, and names that don't have an inherent nickname. And I'll talk about that more when I get to the list. The other thing that I strangely noticed, which was completely unintentional, I didn't have any girl names written down on my list that started with a vowel. So the first name on my list is Lucy. Because that is my dog's name. Because when we adopted Lucy, her name was previously Ruby, and I didn't feel that it suited her. And and that was 7 years ago. So we had a list of baby names that we kind of just always liked. So the name Lucy was one of my favorite girl names for years. But by the time we adopted her, we had sort of gotten to a place where we were giving up hope a little bit and thought, well, we might as well use it. There's plenty of names out there, and it's okay if we have a daughter, we can name her something else. And our little Lucy has been such an important part of our lives, and she has gotten us through the darkest of days, and her name will be sacred always as being her own. So we'll never use that as a girl baby name. The name that always meant the most to me that I was determined to use was Lillian, and that was my grandmother's name, my mother's mother. And she was one of the most important people in my life, and always will be. She unfortunately is no longer with us, which would have made using her name feel bittersweet. The problem is my grandmother never liked her name. She actually, just to let you know just how extraordinary a woman she was, she had a few coworkers over the years ask permission to use her name for their daughters that would be born soon. And my grandmother said, don't name your daughter Lillian, because I always felt like my name sounded like an old lady name and I never liked it. So she suggested to those women who approached her to name their daughters Jillian. And I know at least one of the women did. My grandmother was so important to her that she wanted to use her name for her daughter, and and made that adjustment as my grandmother requested. The problem is that Lillian has since become an incredibly popular name, and I personally know, I think 8, but possibly 9 people who have daughters named Lillian now, since when my husband and I were hoping to try, and that was even before my grandmother had passed. I always just figured, I don't care what she says. I love my grandmother and I'm going to use her name. So many girls are named Lillian these days, and I think it continues to be one of the most popular names in the United States at least. So between those two factors, just the sheer popularity of the name and my grandmother never really liking it in the first place, I have decided that I will not use it. That doesn't mean I won't use it for a middle name potentially in the future. But the reason why I wouldn't just switch to Jillian, because I do like the name Jillian, and I actually think it sounds nice with our last name, but I don't tend to like names that have an inherent nickname. I don't know what it is, and I don't dislike them, and I don't dislike nicknames, so that would take that off the list for me, which is really strange. I mean, it doesn't matter that much at all. I don't think there's anything wrong with Jill, but if I liked the nickname enough, I would pick that over the full name, if that makes sense, just because I have a tendency to like really short, simple names. The next one on the list is Pearl, and Pearl is a beautiful name. It's one my husband and I both like, but unfortunately we think it just sounds weird with our last name. On paper, it's great, it's perfect, it looks beautiful, but to say it out loud, it doesn't really become a tongue twister, but in a way it does. It just doesn't sound right to us. I don't know, Pearl Gilman. It doesn't work. The next name that I absolutely love but will not use is Mara. I like that it's short and it's pretty, and I really like it, but my husband made a point that I just sort of agree with, that it's too close to our niece's name. My sister, her first daughter, firstborn, is named Maya, and I think having a Maya and a Mara just seems a little strange, and that might be overly picky. All of my reasons might sound overly picky to someone else. There are so many wonderful names out there that if something simple and little like that can cause a hang-up, it's not worth holding on to. And the last girl name that's on my list that I love but will not use unless things change in the future is Willa. That is a name that I would have chosen in a heartbeat, but my husband just didn't like it. So I really didn't want to force it on him. I wanted him to love the name just as much as I did, and luckily when I had my first list that I presented him, the first name that was his favorite was also mine, and that just never changed. So it just feels right, and I didn't feel the need to have a campaign against his decision to take Willa off the list. And the last name I will share with you is a boy name that I will not use, and it is also related to my grandmother. It was stolen from me directly by a former friend, and something about that put such a bad taste in my mouth. And even though I'm no longer friends with this person, and that's not the reason, but you can imagine a person who blatantly does something like that also gives you other reasons to not want to return friendship to them. So my sister and I were mutual friends with this person, and we were just sitting around on like a Friday night having drinks and talking, and I had mentioned that I would love in the future to name a son Jackson, because that was my grandmother's maiden name, and at the time it really was not a very common name. Now, over the years, it has become, again, one of the most popular names. But what really ruined it for me, I think, was that this person she told us she was going to steal the name. She had said it to my sister behind my back that she loved that name and she was going to use it. And my sister said, well, how are you going to do that? Why would you do that? And she's like, well, I'll just have to have a baby first. And sure enough, she did. She had a boy, and she named him Jackson. And it just felt like, well, that's ruined now. So that is my list. And if you have a similar story with a name that either became too popular or someone stole from you or that your partner didn't care for, I'm so curious, and I would love to hear what those names are. And in fact, I know some of you watching do have Lillians and Jacksons out there, and it makes my heart happy. That is my story. Those are my names, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.